stage did the most to charge the atmosphere with significance. After the presentation of the United States flag, a, quote, strong male voice, or rather cracked and elderly, end quote, arose, quote, into which two women's voices blended and sang, "My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing." Other black voices joined in, creating a scene so moving that the 1st South Carolina's commander, Colonel Thomas Wentworth Higginson, recounted that he never, quote, saw anything so electric, end quote. His regiment was then deployed to Florida. 3 months later, and after having vanquished a unit of the Confederate Army just south of the Florida-Georgia border, the regiment received orders on April 1st, 1863, to decamp from their position in Jacksonville and set up a picket line at Fort Royal Ferry, South Carolina. Having experienced a wave of enthusiasm from successfully capturing Confederate territory, a wave of enthusiasm from successfully, the soldiers felt dejected by the command. Colonel Higginson described the scene of the departure, a scene of black soldiers waking up early to pack their tents and other supplies and then marching north through Georgia to their new regiment, and they're being greeted along the way by black civilians. To buoy their spirits, the black Union soldiers sang John Brown's Body, marching along, and when this cruel war is over, as they march on to their next post. Among the mass of soldiers, one figure stood out to Colonel Higginson. He observed that, quote, at the head of the force there walked, by some self-imposed preeminence, a respectable elderly female, one of the company laundresses, whose vigorous stride we never could quite overtake. Toting a bundle on her head, she pressed on, followed by the drum corps and the rest of the 1st South Carolina. 2 years after the Day of Jubilee and after Union efforts and a tide of black resistance pushed the Confederacy to the brink of collapse, black leaders in Savannah, Georgia gathered with Union Army officers for an encounter of a different sort. They met face to face with Union Major General William Tecumseh Sherman, who had just led his formidable armed units through Georgia to its coast, followed by African Americans who used the Union's advance to claim their freedom. Sherman asked local black leaders about how to respond to the crisis prompted by those black refugees. The cohort of African American leaders included the 72-year-old Alaskan tailor. Andrew Neal, age 61, was among that number, as was William Bentley, age 72. Indeed, the age of the 20 representatives, all of whom were men, averaged 50 years old, a number that far exceeded the average life expectancy of black Southerners in the late antebellum period. Their primary spokesman, Garrison Frazier, was 67, a former slave originally from North Carolina. Retired from his vocation as a Baptist minister, and with his health failing, Frazier represented the interests of his community. He represented them well. When Sherman asked about the meaning of freedom, Frazier responded that it is, quote, taking us from under the yoke of bondage and placing us where we can reap the fruit of our labor. And when Sherman asked how former slaves could become self-sufficient, Frazier replied, quote, the way we can best take care of ourselves is to have land and turn it and till it by our own labor. That is, by the labor of the women and children and old men. And we can soon maintain ourselves and have something to spare. Frazier's and his peers gave voice to a freedom dream, a vision of 40 acres and a mule for former slaves. In these snapshots of African Americans as they emerged from slavery, contemporaries identified the aged as critical figures in the story of emancipation. Garrison Frazier and his fellow church elders, the cracked and elderly lead singer at the reading of the Emancipation Proclamation outside of Beaufort, and the laundress behind the 1st South Carolina Regiment marched, behind whom the 1st South Carolina marched, all held keys that unlocked the prison of enslavement. other black people in old age are the primary subjects of this book. Thank you. I look forward to the conversation.